Module 11 Project Risk Management, Module Overview. Project risk management includes the processes of conducting risk management planning, identification, analysis, response planning, response implementation, and monitoring risk on a project. The objectives of project risk management are to increase the probability and/or impact of positive risks and to decrease the probability and/or impact of negative risks in order to optimize the chances of project success. That's from PMBOK Guide page 395. The lessons in this module are the 11.0 Project Risk Management Module Overview, which is this lesson of course. 11.1 Project Risk Management, the process of defining how to conduct risk management activities for a project. 11.2 Identify risks, the process of identifying individual project risks as well as sources of overall project risk and documenting their characteristics. 11.3 Perform qualitative risk analysis, the process of prioritizing individual project risks for further analysis or action by assessing their probability of occurrence and impact as well as other characteristics. 11.4 Perform quantitative risk analysis, the process of numerically analysing the combined effect of identified individual project risks and other sources of uncertainty or overall project objectives. 11.5 Plan risk responses, the process of developing options, selecting strategies and agreeing on actions to address overall project risk exposure as well as to treat individual project risks. 11.6 Implement risk responses, the process of implementing agreed upon risk response plans. 11.7 Monitor risks, the process of monitoring and implementing agreed upon risk response plans, tracking identified risks, identifying and analysing new risks, and evaluating risk process effectiveness throughout the project. The key concepts for project risk management. All projects are risky since they are unique undertakings with varying degrees of complexity that aim to deliver benefits. What does this actually mean? It means that in order to make money in a competitive world, you have to take risks, you have to take chances. If you don't need to take risks, then everyone would be earning a lot of money. But there's no point in taking risks just for the sake of taking risks. When I was 14 years old, my family and one of my friends spent most weekends in a holiday home near the beach. I had a large rowing boat and my friend and I would look forward to storms occurring and we would launch the boat in the sea and row against mountainous waves. People used to stop their cars and watch us thinking that we'd been caught in the storm unexpectedly, and we actually had the Coast Guard try to rescue us once. They couldn't understand why kids would willingly put their lives at risk. Thrill seekers take incredible risks because they enjoy the danger. Normal people in business do not enjoy the danger. They are there to make money. A project is a gateway to earning money and risk is inevitable in projects. As we covered near the start of the course, there are many reasons for undertaking a project in the business, but making money or avoiding losing money is the real purpose behind most, if not all of them. For our projects, we need to identify constraints and make assumptions, but assumptions carry risks of their own. You don't have to prove assumptions are true, and in many circumstances you can't. You just need to believe that they're true and be able to give good reasons to justify your belief. Suppose you're carrying out some construction work in the Sahara Desert and you have large quantities of cement and other materials which must be kept dry, but they're uncovered. Why are they uncovered? Because this is the Sahara Desert. It is one of the driest places in the entire earth. In fact, it is in the rare times that it actually rains, the rain evaporates before it reaches the ground. So we've made the reasonable assumption that the materials will not get wet in the Sahara Desert. I would say this is reasonable, wouldn't you? There is a risk that the materials might get wet, but even though the impact would be high, in fact very high, the likelihood of the desert being wet is minute. On December 19, 2016, which is pretty recently, it snowed in the Sahara Desert for the first time in 37 years. It was just a thin coating of snow, but enough to destroy a lot of our materials that had to be kept dry. This photo was taken by Jeff Robinson Photography. The snow didn't last long, but it could have damaged our materials. We would had to scrap a lot of materials. It's expensive. Construction stops for a week while we ship in more cement and other materials. We have a meeting to discuss the issue. Do we cover the replacement materials? We agreed it did snow. It snowed once 37 years ago, and so it's an unknown risk. We will cover all those terms later. Covering up the materials will be expensive, and the chances of it snowing again are so tiny that we're still going to keep with our original assumption that the materials are not going to get wet again. This is a reasonable assumption, isn't it? Yes, of course it is. So we have a meeting to discuss the issue. A month later, January 23rd, 2017, there was a heavy fall of snow that blanketed the Sahara Desert up to 1 metre deep. Assumptions carry risks. Organisations should choose to take project risk in a controlled and intentional manner in order to create value while balancing risk and reward. Project risk management aims to identify and manage risks that are not addressed by other project management processes. When unmanaged, these risks have the potential to cause a project to deviate from the plan and to fail to achieve the defined project objectives. Consequently, the effectiveness of project risk management is directly related to project success. Risks exist at two levels within every project. The first level is the individual level, and by this I mean considering risks individually, not risks assigned to individual people. Although some people I've worked with deserve their own risk category. The second level is the overall project risk. Why do we separate the two? Because when we look at risks one at a time, we might accept them, but when we take a step backward and view the entire risk landscape for a project, we might decide it's better to just walk away. Project risk management processes address both levels of risks in project, and they are defined as follows. Individual project risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on one or more project objectives. Individual project risk can have a positive or negative effect on project objectives if they occur. Overall project risk is the effect of uncertainty on the project as a whole, arising from all sources of uncertainty, including individual risks representing the exposure of stakeholders to the implications of variations in project outcome, both positive and negative. Project risk management aims to exploit or enhance positive risks or opportunities whilst avoiding or mitigating negative risks or threats. Now this is what I call a PMBOKism. Organisations tend to consider negative risks first, and they may consider positive risks. But in the PMBOK guide, it always considered positive risks first. Also remember, in the exam, a risk that can only be negative is called a threat or a pure risk. A risk that can be only positive is called an opportunity. A risk that can be either positive or negative is called a business risk. Unmanaged threats may result in issues or problems such as delays, cost overruns, performance shortfalls, or loss of reputation. Opportunities that are captured can lead to benefits such as reduced time and cost, improved performance, or reputation. Overall project risk can also be positive or negative. Management of overall project risk aims to keep project risk exposure within an acceptable range by reducing drivers of negative variation, promoting drivers of positive variation, and maximising the probability of achieving overall project objectives. Risks will continue to emerge during the lifetime of the project, so project risk management processes should be conducted iteratively. Risk is initially addressed during project planning by shaping the project strategy. Risk should also be monitored and managed as the project progresses to ensure that the project stays on track and emergent risks are addressed. In order to manage risk effectively on a particular project, the project team needs to know what level of risk exposure is acceptable in pursuit of project objectives. This is defined by measurable risk thresholds that reflect the risk appetite of the organisation and individual project stakeholders. Risk thresholds express the degree of acceptable variation around a project objective. They are explicitly stated and communicated to the project team and reflected in the definitions of risk impact levels for your project. So in the exam, if you're asked about willingness to accept a risk or stakeholder risk thresholds, they usually expect in the answer risk appetite. What are the trends and emerging practices in project risk management? These include non-event risks. Most projects focus only on risks that are uncertain future events that may or may not occur. Examples of risk-based events would include a key seller may go out of business during the project, the customer may change the requirements after the design is completed, or a subcontractor may postpone enhancement to a standard operating process. There is an increasing recognition that non-event risks need to be identified and managed. There are two main types of non-event risks. First one is variability risk. Uncertainty exists about some key characteristics of a planned event or activity or decision. Examples of variability risks include productivity may be above or below target. The number of errors found during testing may be higher or lower than expected, or unseasonal weather conditions may occur during the construction phase, such as blizzards in the Sahara Desert. There's ambiguity risk. Uncertainty exists about what might happen in the future. Areas of the project where imperfect knowledge might affect the project's ability to achieve its objectives include elements of the requirement or technical solution, future developments in regulatory frameworks, or inherent systemic complexity in the project. Variability risk can be addressed using Monte Carlo analysis with a range of variation reflected in probability distributions, followed by actions to reduce the spread of possible outcomes. Ambiguity risks are managed by defining the areas of ambiguity, then filling the gap by obtaining expert external input or benchmarking against best practices. Ambiguity is also addressed through incremental development, prototyping or simulation. Project resilience. The existence of emergent risks is becoming clear with a growing awareness of so-called unknowable unknowns, also called unknown unknowns. These are risks that can only be recognized after they have occurred. Emergent risks can be tackled through developing project resilience. This requires each project to have the right level of budget and schedule contingency for emergent risks, in addition to a specific risk budget for known risks. Flexible project processes that can cope with emergent risks while maintaining overall direction towards project goals, including strong change management. Empowered project team that has clear objectives and that is trusted to get the job done within agreed limits. Frequent review of early warning signs to identify emergent risks as clearly as possible. And clear input from stakeholders to identify areas where the project scope or strategy can be adjusted in response to emergent risks. Integrated risk management. Projects exist in an organizational context and they may form part of a program or portfolio. Risk exists at each of these levels and risks should be owned and managed at the appropriate level. For example, if your company manufactures toxic chemicals, it will already have in place a risk management regimen to address many of the risks associated with these products. And so when you undertake a project to develop a new chemical or new machine or process to produce toxic chemicals, your project risk management will be incorporated into the organizational risk management. Tailoring considerations. The list of questions to consider, rather than any advice on how to tailor them, can be found on page 400 of the PMBOK guide. Considerations for agile adaptive environments. High variability environments by definition incur more uncertainty and risk. To address this, projects managed using adaptive approaches make use of frequent reviews of incremental work products and cross-functional project teams to accelerate knowledge sharing and ensure that the risk is understood and managed. Risk is considered when selecting the content of each iteration, and risks are also identified, analysed and managed during each iteration. Additionally, the requirements are kept as a living document that is updated regularly, and work may be prioritised as the project progresses based on an improved understanding of the current risk exposure. And that brings us to the end of Project Risk Management Module Overview. Next lesson is 11.1, Plan Risk Management. Please read the corresponding chapter in the PMBOK guide before watching the next video to reduce the risks of not understanding it fully.